All right, I'm live. Hey guys, it's Lady Raven, the Wild Witch. Sorry, my hair's a mess. Um, so today we're here to talk about the new year and what does that mean for everybody. I'm going to give it a few minutes to see if anybody's going to join. We may not have anybody join today because it's right after the holidays, which is fine. Then I'll just record it and leave it for you guys. But anyway, so let's get started. So let's talk about the new year and what that actually means and what it represents. Um, if you think about the yearly cycle, right, it kind of goes in a circle. So there's a lot of debate with people as to when does the new year actually start. Does it start at the beginning of winter? Does it start in the spring? There are some people that celebrate their new year starting with the astrological new year when Aries comes in. This is when they celebrate it. In various magical traditions, for example, in mine, the new year happens at Samhain, and then we celebrate that as the beginning of our new cycle. Some people celebrate the beginning of their new year in Yule because it's the birth of the sun and starting the cycle all over again. You have our normal calendar, which celebrates the new year on the 31st. If you have the Chinese calendar, you're going to celebrate the new year in a whole different date. So there's a lot of different new year celebrations that happen, and people always argue as to which one is the most valid. I've heard many, many arguments talking about how the actual calendar year, new year, for us is not valid because it was artificially created and all this. When the fact of the matter is, if you look at the cycle, it is a circle, right? So the argument is, when does the circle begin and when does it end? It honestly can begin anywhere we want it to begin, and it can end at the point where it began. So as long as you covered the entire thing, every time you go all the way around, you've completed one cycle. Where you began that cycle doesn't really matter. So whenever you decide to start celebrating your new year, just pick what's the date that's going to be symbolic of a new year for you. When does that new year start, right? And I use, for my spiritual practice, I generally start my new year right after Samhain. Sometimes I started at Yule, just for the sake of that. But then in my everyday life, I started obviously on the regular calendar new year. So you can celebrate the beginning of the cycle in different areas of your life to be different. Chances are, if you're a teacher, your new year is going to start in the fall as opposed to starting in the beginning of the year. And that is no less valid than the beginning of any other new year, because you're still sitting on that wheel and you're still having a date on that wheel where you're beginning your cycle. So it's very important that you understand that there is no wrong way to celebrate a new year. So the new year for you is whatever feels right for you. What's the date that it feels right? So if you want to stick with the new year calendar, then that's fine. And there's nothing inherently wrong with it. Is it an arbitrary date that was selected? Absolutely. When we created the Gregorian calendar, the whole thing, they decided that 12 months of so many days each month, and at the end of the year was going to be on this year and on this date. And it is an arbitrary point that was selected that the whole world pretty much lives around that arbitrary point. But if you feel that you need to have a different new year for yourself for other purposes, then there's nothing wrong with selecting that for yourself and deciding when your new year is going to begin. So if you're like me and you have two different new years, so you start looking at what is it that you are going to be doing now in this new year. What does your new year symbolize, and why does it symbolize? Why are you choosing that day? So for example, in my case, since I am choosing the end of the harvest season to symbolize my spiritual new year, so that means that the new year has started in the winter already, right? And for me, the winter in my spiritual side is the planning side. This is where all of it is. This is why a lot of the videos I've done recently have been around planning and looking to the future and looking to what it is that we're going to do, because this is the energy that I am sitting with right now. So this is looking forward to the new year and planning the new year. So this is why I do it in that way in terms of my spiritual calendar, because it just makes sense that the end of the harvest is basically the end of everything that I worked for in that year. The final harvest, I harvested everything, and now I'm ready to begin again in a different way. So it's really important that you understand why you're choosing that new year to be your new year. In my everyday life, my new year obviously starts on the first, which is kind of where everybody's new year starts on everyday life, regardless of what you celebrate in either spirituality or other practices. So decide when you want your new year, and then decide what is that new year going to symbolize for you, right? So we're now coming into the regular new year that is starting on the January 1st. So this is what we're coming to now. So what is that new year going to symbolize for you? So traditional themes of new years in terms of the secular symbols of it is that we are moving into the new year as a time of saying goodbye to the old, saying hello to the new, of looking at new opportunities. What are some of the customs that come with that? New Year's resolutions are huge, huge custom that comes with that. The idea of this year is going to be different. I am going to make changes in my life this year. And of course, half the time we forget about it when it comes to spring, because the energy shifts at that point, right? So the energy in the planet is going to say, now is time to actually plant what are the things that you actually think you can do and make happen. And even though in the winter we have all these ideas of the sky's the limit, all these dreams are possible, when it comes time to actually engage in the reality and every day of it, we look to see, okay, what is it? Obviously, I can't make all of this happen in this new year. So what is it that is possible? What is feasible from all of this that's going on? What can I make happen for this time for this new year? So those are some of the themes that you work with in the new year. So I like to keep New Year's resolutions. So for me, I don't go balls to the wall with them. I try to keep them small, because if you keep them small, then it's easier to stick with them. And also, I make them stackable. So I say, okay, my New Year's resolution is for the next 30 or 60 days to do this. And then I'm going to start that in the new year. But then throughout the year, I'm going to build on that behavior. So let's say my New Year's resolution for this year is to lose some weight, because I put on a lot of weight thanks to COVID. And so the beginning of the year, one of the things that I've done already is I've quit drinking. So I quit drinking. And so this is going to be the first 30 days, 60 days. My focus is on that. And now that I'm pretty much, I'm almost 60 days into my quitting. I'm like, for 6 weeks in. So now I'm starting to look forward to the next step. So when the new year comes on the 1st, and like I said, my spiritual new year started in Samhain. So this is when that was made. But now we're coming up on the 1st. So now it's time to build on that little goal of losing weight, right? So quit drinking was the first one, taking in all those liquid calories. Now the next step of it is going to be cutting down on sweets, which I have a sweet tooth from hell. So that is going to be the next thing I'm going to do. And I'm going to build on that, right? And then after that, I'm going to maybe build on and say, okay, now I'm substituting a lot of the carbs, and I'm substituting that for some more healthy things that I'm going to eat. And this is how you build your lifestyle change, right? Because I don't want it to just be a resolution and a fad and then it goes away. If I decided on the 1st that I was going to go ahead and do all of this, I'm going to quit drinking, I'm going to quit eating sugar, I'm going to quit doing all this, I'm going to start working out. This is an unattainable goal for me. I know I've done this before, tried it many times. I know it's unattainable. So I'm breaking it down into small pieces that makes it a lot easier for me to attain. So for you, I would encourage you to say, okay, here's the new year coming. What do I want to do? What is my big plan for the new year? So think about what your goal is and how are you going to break that down into smaller pieces, and then decide what your timeline is going to be of how you're going to build on these little pieces, because it really keeps you from getting disinterested. If you know that I've got 30 days of this and I can just do it for 30 days or 60 days. If you're trying to do behavior change, 60 to 90 days is really the least amount that you can do before you see an actual change in it, because everybody can keep something up for 30 days, but then after that you just kind of lose interest in it. But if you can keep it up for 60 days and for 90 days, it's a little bit different. So decide what that's going to be and then build on that. So let's say your idea is, I am going to start my business. So the very first 60-day goal that I'm going to have for this year is going to be to come up with a name for my business and to design my product. What am I going to offer? Either a service or a product. So this is what I'm doing in this new year, right? I have a name and I'm deciding on what my products are going to be. And I'm going to do that for 2 months. These 2 months, this is my deadline to do all of that. And then once all of that's done, let's say the next 2 months that you're going to take, you say, okay, now this is the time to start networking with people around me, and maybe start actually getting my hands dirty and deciding on what my website's going to look like. What are my outlets? Where am I going to sell the product to? Who's going to be my customer base? Maybe getting my business cards done. This is all the beginning business stuff. So give yourself 60 days to get through all of that, right? And then once you get through all of that, then the next 60 days is going to be, okay, now I've got my business idea and product line is solid. I've got my website, my, business presence in the community created. Now my next 60 days is going to be driving customers and awareness of my business, which is basically coming out of the community saying, hey guys, I'm here. Here's what I'm offering to you. Come have service with me or come buy a bunch of stuff from me. And then you bring that in, you kind of loop that in. So that means that as you go through this year, the first year of building a business or any other project that you're working on, if you're working on a promotion at work, same process basically. Anything else that you're working on, you can build it 2 months at a time, and it helps you to stick to your New Year's resolution if you break that down into smaller goals for you to do. And it also is going to help you in terms of spell work, right? Because when you do spell work, the bigger your goal, the more dispersed your energy gets. So if you say, I want to start a new business and I want it to be successful, and then you basically get started on the new business, and I don't know what that is. Von Rent. That's a comment, I guess. I'm not sure. If you want to comment in English, I can respond to it, but I'm not sure what that comment is. But what was I saying? Crap. Now my train of thought's gone. Thank you, menopause. Hey, Paula. So building, spell work. Got it. I'm back. So spell work. So if you have a big giant goal and you say, I don't know what my business product is going to be, I don't know the business name, but I just know that I want to start a business in the new year. This is my goal. That's a huge goal. If you're going to do spell work for that, that's a lot of moving parts. So your spell is going to have very little effect because your energy is going to be divided up amongst a very large field of small things, which means that all of these little things are going to get a teeny little bit of energy instead of all of the energy being focused into one big thing that you're moving forward. So if you break down your goals into little things, so then you say, okay, here's my first part of my new year. My plan is to come up with a business name and a product line. Now it becomes a little bit more manageable, right? You're not planning for everything, planning for product and business name. So now you can do your spell work and say, okay, what is my business name? What is my product? You do your spell work and you have a much smaller goal, which means that the energy is more focused like a laser beam, and you have a much higher likelihood of actually getting somewhere with it. So there's a lot of different benefits that you can gain, not just in terms of sticking to your goals, but in terms of how you're using energy and magic to help you stick to those goals. So something else that you can do in the new year is you can give thanks and gratitude and for all of the spirits that have worked with you. So an offering ceremony in the new year is a very common thing. And essentially what it is, it's a giving thanks for everything that you've done for me in the past. And also asking, here is all of the things I hope you will walk with me in this new year and help me out with my goals in this year. So you give an offering as a gratitude for what happened, and you give a petition for what you want in the new year. So whether you're working with ancestor spirits, with your other helping spirits, with gods and goddesses, with orishas, with loas, even with animal totems, you can begin that with maybe doing a shamanic journey, or you can just do a regular offering. You can do an offering ceremony, a whole big ceremony that's going to offer things for a lot of different entities. I think that the beginning of the year is always a time to give an offering to your spirit helpers, to acknowledge them that you didn't make it through this year by yourself. You made it through this year with a lot of help. So I normally like to offer them all a candle, and I sprinkle a little bit of gratitude incense on top of it, or you can just sprinkle some rose petals if you want to, something sweet, something, or a little bit of cinnamon sometimes, or a little bit of nutmeg. You can sprinkle that on top of your candle to kind of give it a very pleasant scent and to say, this is a big gratitude and thank you for everything that you have done for me in this new year. So that's another thing that you can do. I personally like to do a lot of divination in the new year. This is another idea. So there's a lot of different new year spreads that you can do. So I'm going to try to post in the Wyld community. If you go in, I'm going to post two spreads that I'm familiar with. One of them is a 12-month spread. Which basically it looks like a big giant clock, right? And it's got the middle, it's got you and what your goals are for the new year. And then if you look at the giant clock, it's got 12 months all around, and then what it is that you're supposed to do in each individual month of the year and what your outcome is going to be. So you get a whole reading that you do for yourself for the whole year. I'm going to give you one bit of advice if you do that. So do not attempt to read for yourself intuitively, because you are not going to have a positive reading. You're going to read way too much into it, or you're going to overthink things. So what you need to do is get a deck that really resonates with you, that has explanations that are very clear and direct in the book. And then when you do your whole reading, you're going to go by the book meanings of what you got. You're not going to interpret it. You're not going to say, well, this really means this. No, it means whatever the book is telling you that it means. And so that is the way you get more accurate results for yourself if you're doing a reading for yourself. It's really hard to have intuition to interpret a reading that you're doing for yourself, because you have a tendency to look and see in your reading all of your biggest hopes. Everything's going to work out. It's going to be all roses. Or your biggest fears. Nothing's going to work out. Everything's going to go to shit before the end of it. So you're not going to get an accurate reading when you read by intuition for yourself, or when you extrapolate on the meaning. So if the meaning of the thing says, oh, we're going to see, let's say new leaves are coming. So what the hell did the leaves mean, right? You may not know that. Make a note of that in your journal, and it says new leaves are coming. And then what happens is during that time, you may want to look into your what's happening in your life, and then read back to what that month said for you and say, leaves in this way means it could mean that there's a lot of help coming from different ways, or it could mean there's a lot of crap coming from different places. You're not going to know what that is until you actually start that month and things start happening. You're like, I remember now. This means, so these are my leaves that are coming. And then you can look at the rest of the description. So what do I do with these leaves now? And look at it. Because if you just go ahead and interpret this as saying, oh, this is going to be all great. New leaves means new life coming, beautiful new things coming. And this is what it is. You may be wrong on that. Or new leaves are coming means getting rid of the old. It may be like, okay, something is getting destabilized. I'm going to lose some shit to make room for other things. Is that what's going to happen? You don't know. You don't know what that metaphorical meaning of the leaves are going to be for you in your reading. And you can't interpret that for yourself very well until you're actually starting that month. And then in that month, you're in that energy. And now you're going to be like, oh, I know exactly what this means. So be very careful when you're trying to intuitively read into a reading for yourself, because there's a lot of pitfalls. So my recommendation is pick decks. And what I have at home is I have the decks that I use for me to read in for myself. I don't use those decks for anything else. Those decks are only used for myself. So it becomes imprinted with my energy. It becomes something that is just mine and mine alone. It's never going to read for anybody else. And so after a while, I understand what the meanings are. Basically, you end up memorizing the book after a while. And when you look it up, you go, okay, this is what this means. And over time, you're gonna develop a dialogue with that dialect, right? With a dialogue with that deck, not dialect. A dialogue with that deck. You're going to know that every single time that deck tells you that leaves are happening, leaves for you in your translator, between you and the deck, mean a specific thing. So over time, as you start looking at your reading and you start watching the results, you start making connections and getting validation that every single time it talks about leaves, these are the things that happen. So now I know that when it says leaves, this is what it means. You can't know that after one reading. You can't even know that after 2 or 3 readings. This is something that's going to develop over time as you continue to work with that one particular deck. So New Year's is a great time to do a reading just to look to the new year and say, get some advice. There's another spread you can do, which is if I have these ideas of these things that I should be working on, Is this the year for me to step up and start working on them? Are these the things that I should be focusing on? And you can do a reading for that. And the answer is going to be yes, you should absolutely be focusing on these things. Or the answer is going to be no, this is not for you this year, leave it alone. You don't know what that answer is going to be until you do the reading. And once again, same rules apply. Make sure that you pick a deck, the same deck. You can even use the same deck for both of them, and say, I'm going to go strictly by what the book says, and I'm not going to try to interpret the metaphors yet until I have a valid dictionary between me and that deck. And this is how you start building relationship between you and that deck, and understanding what specific cards and what specific symbols from that deck are going to translate into real life communication. And this is part of training your intuition to do all of this work. So just to recap, so some of the things you can do in this new year, first of all, decide if this is the new year for you or not. If you're going to celebrate this new year right on January 1st, or if you're going to choose to celebrate it another time. And that is perfectly valid. There's nothing wrong with that. Number two, if you're going to make resolutions, break them down into small pieces that are more achievable and that you can actually do work, spell work, to support your goal and what you're moving through. Number three, be sure to give offerings to all of your spirits. Give thanks, give gratitude, and then ask them for their help in the new year. Rope them in and make them true partners with you as you walk through this path. And then finally, number four, New Year time is a great time for divination of all kinds. So if you want to start pulling some cards to see what your New Year is going to look like, or just to get an overview of the New Year, like I talked about the 12-month thing. And once again, I'm going to post it in the Wyld community. So if you're not a member and you want to see it, join www.wyldcommunity.com, and you'll be able to see there. I'll post a couple different spreads that everybody can use. And so that's basically all I have for you guys for the new year. I hope that no matter what you celebrate this year, no matter what you decide to bring to the table, I hope you have a fantastic new year. I hope that you have it filled with joy and happiness, and I hope that all of your wishes get to happen. Now, don't forget, tomorrow we're going to be doing our lives, our last live of 2021. I'm already in next year, 2021. And once again, the live is going to focus on those four things that we talked about. How do we give gratitude? It's going to be basically offerings and gratitude, different types of candles and things that we can offer, different types of maybe spells or prayers that can be offered, things like that. It's going to be talking about divination. So we're going to have a few decks for you guys to choose from, a few different ideas. I'm going to talk about the ones that I know and I'm familiar with. That way you guys can kind of get a little bit of a insight into what that is. And then finally, the last thing is going to be planning for your new year and deciding what is your New Year's resolution going to be and how do I stick to it for those first 2 months of it so that I can start building on that. And we'll have some tools to help you out with that tomorrow. The other thing I want to say is next week, there will be no Witches In, and there will be no live because I'm going to be out of town. So I'm going to get a break in the next week so that I will see you guys the week after that. And those of you who generally attend my chakra ceremony, chakra balancing ceremony that happens on the first Monday of every month, because I will be out of town for next month, it's going to happen on the second Monday of the month. So it'll be not on let me look at my calendar here. It will not be on the 3rd. It will be happening on the 10th. So we'll see you all then. And I hope to see everybody tomorrow too. So anyway, guys, take care. Have a blessed new year. And I wish you all the best. Bye-bye.